Good day, everyone. My name is Brian, and I'll be facilitating this Ecomdash webinar. Today, we're going to be covering listing tool tips and tricks. So this will be a more advanced webinar focusing on some of the new and cool features that are part of the Ecomdash listing tool. We're going to cover things like listing profiles, how to submit variation listings, how to create and revise your listings in bulk, and how to monitor any errors that may occur with your listings during the listing submission process. We're scheduled to get started right here at 2 o'clock, which is coming up in just a few minutes. We'll let that time go a few minutes longer in case anyone else needs to join us. So we'll plan on getting started right about 2:04 or 2:05. I'll go ahead and flip the page over to the agenda, so you can begin to familiarize yourselves with what we'll be covering in today's webinar. If you do have any questions, we'll be accepting those at the end of the webinar. Feel free to use the GoToWebinar tool to submit those questions whenever you have them pop up, and I'll be happy to address them at the end of the presentation. We'll be getting started here in just about 4 to 5 minutes, so hang tight, and I'll be back on the line momentarily. All right, everyone. For those of you that are just joining us, welcome. Again, my name is Brian, and I'll be facilitating this Ecomdash listing tool webinar today. As you can see from the agenda on the screen, we're going to be covering some of the more advanced features of our listing tool. We're going to start out with a discussion about listing profiles, which are a fairly new feature in Ecomdash. We're going to talk about what listing profiles are used for, how to create them, and how to assign those to your products. Then we'll move into a discussion about variation listings, the intricacies that come with listing variation products in Ecomdash and how that process functions. We'll also talk about listing in bulk and how to manage your listings in bulk. That'll include creating listings in bulk, revising listings in bulk, and how to get those revisions off to your storefronts in a very streamlined process. We'll finish with a discussion on how to end listings in bulk and then how to review your listing submission history. It's a great way to see any errors that might be occurring between Ecomdash and your storefront and learn how to debug things yourself without having to take time out of your day to contact our support staff. We'll finish up with some questions. If at any point during the webinar you do have questions, feel free to submit those using the GoToWebinar tool. Those questions will be logged and recorded, and we'll be able to address those towards the end of the presentation. With that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. Now, this webinar is going to be covering some of the more advanced features of the listing tool, so we'll be skipping over the basics of the Ecomdash listing tool. In order to really grasp a lot of the content in here, you should have familiarity with how to create a single listing in Ecomdash and the different parts of that workflow that are related to creating a listing, assigning details to your product, assigning storefront specific information, and submitting that listing out to the storefront. That includes the process of creating a listing draft, using the listing validation tool, and publishing that listing out to the storefront. Regarding variation products, this webinar is going to be focused on the listing portion of a variation product. So you should already know how to create variation products, or if you don't know how to create a variant product in your Ecomdash account, there are plenty of resources out there for you. You should definitely review that information before you attempt to submit a variation listing out to your storefront. You should also have some familiarity with how to edit information in bulk in Ecomdash using our inventory import formats. Those can be customized to meet your needs, and they will be very useful when it comes to submitting revisions in bulk and setting listing information in bulk. So having a working knowledge of that tool will be very useful for you. If all of that sounds foreign to you, or you have never encountered those tools or those processes before, feel free to reach out to our support team. We'll be happy to get you some information related to those. Lots of information is also available on our support site. That link down there is at the bottom of the page. You can plug that directly into your web browser, and that link will also be included in the description of this video on YouTube for those of you who will be watching the recorded version of the webinar later. That being said, if you are unfamiliar with any of those topics, now might be a good time to go familiarize yourselves with those. We'll have this webinar up on YouTube momentarily, and once it's up on YouTube, you'll be able to review it and hopefully be able to comprehend that information much better. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with creating listing profiles. So in Ecomdash, a listing profile is a way to assign information to your listings in a very easy way. We've observed that a lot of people who use Ecomdash list in similar categories or similar types of products, or use the same information on all those listings. And a listing profile is a way to easily say, hey, I want this listing on eBay to have all these fields assigned almost automatically, so I don't have to worry about going in and setting all those fields individually to make sure that eBay has all the information it needs. Listing profiles, you can create as many of those as you'd like in Ecomdash. You can create multiple profiles for a single storefront. You can create multiple profiles for all of your storefronts. However, you can only assign one profile to each listing at a time. That'll make a little bit more sense when we actually get into the details of how listing profiles work. That being said, let's go ahead and start talking about listing profiles, because I think seeing how they operate will add a lot more clarity, and you can see how this tool is very useful. So let's go ahead and hop into Ecomdash. So listing profiles can be created by navigating to Settings, Listing Settings, and Listing Defaults. Right up here at the top of the page, you'll see a list of all the storefronts you have added to Ecomdash, and you can create a listing profile for any storefront associated with Ecomdash. So we do have a few that are up here, and there are a few storefronts that we don't have added to this account, but just because you don't see it here doesn't mean you can't create a listing profile for it. If that storefront is added to your account, you should see that storefront icon there. To get started, you'll select the storefront you want to create a listing profile for. So we'll just start out with Etsy. Now it looks like we already have a profile created for Etsy. It's an Etsy women's clothing profile. But let's go ahead and start out by adding a new one, because that's most likely where you'll be getting started. To do that, you just click on this blue Add Profile button. And let's just call this the Etsy clothing profile. So naming the profile is just internal to Ecomdash. That information won't be shared with your storefront or any other locations. You just want to make sure you name your profile something that you'll be able to reference in the future. If you're just creating one listing profile per storefront, that's not a big deal. Ecomdash will not allow you to apply an eBay profile to an Etsy listing or an Etsy profile to an Amazon listing. You'll only be able to select the one for the specific storefront. But if you do plan on using multiple listing profiles for a storefront, you might want to add something to that name that'll clue you into what that profile will be used for, whether it's a specific category, specific shipping profile, specific tagging information, whatever that might be, just to give yourself some sort of clue what that profile will be used for and what products it should be applied to. Once we've named the profile, you'll go ahead and click Save, and you'll be presented with a page that'll show you a blank listing profile. Now, the information that you'll see on a listing profile page is information that is available as part of the listing details for any product that will be listed on that storefront. So the page that we'll see here for Etsy is different than the page that we'll see for eBay. I'll show you a preview of an eBay listing profile in a moment so you can see what I mean. Now what we can do is we can go through here and start defining information that we'd like to use for any product we apply this template to. As an important note, you don't have to set all fields as part of your listing profile. You can do something as simple as saying, hey, I want to define my shipping template on Etsy to be 1 to 3 days. That's the only template I have. I'm going to use that on every product. So that's all this template is going to do for me. The rest of this information I'll take care of on a product by product level. That being said, where listing templates become really powerful is when you do define more than one piece of information as part of the template. We can say what section of the shop we'll want to put this product in. We can define a processing time. So we'll say that processing time is going to be 1 to 2 days. We can define what category we'd like all these products to be in. So let's go ahead and just pick women's clothing as that category. We can also define a lot of information that eBay will require to accept the listing. Something like who made it, when was this product made, and if there's an occasion that this product would be used for. The Etsy relisting controls option is also here, and any other information we want to define. That being said, that should be a good body of information to get a basic Etsy clothing profile set up. So now that we have that information defined, we can go ahead and click Save to save that profile. Great, so we now have a listing profile called the Etsy clothing profile in addition to our Etsy women's clothing profile. Like I mentioned, profiles do look different depending on which storefront you're building them for. So let's take a look at our eBay storefront. You'll notice this eBay profile page is a little bit different. We already have a profile called an eBay sweater profile, and it looks like this is set to have the eBay condition of new with tags. We've already got a category defined, we've got a listing duration, but we don't really have any other information defined for this product. An Amazon template would also look different. To add a new Amazon profile, we'll go ahead and create one, and we'll just call this Amazon Clothing. And here's the information we can define as part of an Amazon profile. So like I said, you can create as many profiles as you'd like. You can create profiles for any storefront you have in Ecomdash. You really just want to think about your business, specifically if when you're creating listings in Ecomdash, there are fields that you find yourself having to set the same information in multiple times. Listing profile will save you a lot of time as it comes to when it comes to create and submit those listings out to your storefronts. Well, now that we talked a little bit about what profiles are used for and how to create profiles, we can move into how to assign profiles to your listings. Listing profiles can be assigned when products are in either an unlisted status or in a draft status, and that'll be applied from either the listings tab within a product details page or within the listing details from the unlisted or draft products page. Now, information that's associated with your template won't be assigned to the listing until the listing is in draft stage. So if you assign a listing template to a listing profile to a product, when that product is in unlisted status, you might not see that information populate there immediately. Just be sure to submit a draft for that listing, and then you'll see that profile information begin to populate. Just keep in mind that only one profile can be applied per listing, so you want to make sure that whichever profile you're applying contains all the information that you would like to use. Any information in a separate profile would need to be defined manually. Great, so hopping back into Ecomdash, let's navigate into inventory and inventory management. And let's pick a product to apply this profile for. Since the profile we built was a clothing profile, putting things in the women's clothing category, we'll go ahead and find a women's clothing product. So here's a great product. It's a blue sweater, so pretty straightforward piece of female clothing. We'll click on View to go ahead and access the product details page for this product. And then we'll navigate over to the Storefronts tab. Now, the Storefronts tab is going to show you what storefronts this product is active on, and what storefronts this product is in a draft status for. Now, you'll notice that this product is not listed anywhere currently, so we have a totally clean slate to work with. Since we have a listing profile for Etsy, we see an option right here to assign an Etsy listing profile, and we can select which profile we'd like to assign. So I'm going to go ahead and assign the Etsy women's clothing profile, and then we'll go ahead and create a draft for that product. Awesome. So that listing is now in draft status. If we go ahead and take a look at the draft listings page and click into the details of this listing, we can see that all the information in our profile has already been assigned. The shipping template, the processing time, who made it, when was it made, and the category information has already been defined. So at this point, we actually don't need to do any other work to submit this listing all out to Etsy. Because we were able to apply that profile, all that work is already done for us. So very powerful tool for creating listings. You can build these profiles for whatever purpose you would like to, and really save yourself a lot of time during the listing process. Great, so moving away from listing profiles, we can start talking about variation listings. So just as a brief overview, variation listings allow your customers to select a particular version of a product they would like to purchase. This is very common with clothing items, also with electronic items. Clothing, the variations are pretty straightforward. Pretty much any clothing item is going to have a variation based on size, small, medium, large, extra large, whichever size the product may be available in. Many products will also vary based on color. So you could have a blue sweater, a green sweater, and a yellow sweater. In the electronics world, we tend to see memory capacity. You can have a phone that's in 32, 64, or 128 gigabyte storage capacity. Those could all be a part of the same listing. Now, once you've created your variation product in Ecomdash, there are some specific concerns when it comes to actually listing that product out to your storefront. So let's take a look at what those concerns may be. So back in Ecomdash, if we navigate back to the listings page, and let's go to listings, listing management, and unlisted products. That's going to be our starting point for a lot of listings. Now, really what I'd like to do is use this sweater as an example, but we already created a draft for that, so bear with me just a moment while we cancel this draft. Awesome. So now that we're on the unlisted products page in Ecomdash, we'll begin by selecting a storefront to submit a listing out to. Let's come back to the same sweater we were working with. Now, you'll notice on the unlisted products page, we have the parent product up here, the blue sweater. We also have each variant that sweater is available in. We have a large size, a medium size, a small size, and an extra large size. And we do have the ability to create a listing for all of these. Now, one thing that's very particular about variation products is each product in a variant can be listed multiple times. For sake of listing a true variation, we don't want to worry about listing the individual variants. We just want to worry about submitting the parent product out to the storefront. If we just submit the parent product, we'll end up with a listing on Etsy where the customer will be able to click into this blue sweater and then select whether they would like to purchase the large, medium, small, or extra large version of that sweater. If we also create listings for the individual variants, we would still get a listing for the parent product where everything is connected in, but we would have a separate listing on Etsy for just the large version of the product and a separate listing for just the medium version of the product. So if that's something that you'd like to do, to have multiple listings on your storefront for the same item, you can absolutely do that. Many people either choose to have one listing per size or a variation listing. It's fairly uncommon to see both listings for the same products on the same storefront, but it's absolutely something that you can do if you need to. So really what we'll need to do here is just select the parent product and then move forward with the rest of the listing process as you normally would in Ecomdash. We can do that by either creating a draft or publishing now. Publishing now will immediately take this product from unlisted and send it straight off to the storefront. If this is a product that's already been listed on a storefront, or you're a pro at listing on Etsy and know that this product has all the required information defined for an Etsy listing, that's a great way to skip a few steps and really increase the speed of your listing workflow. If you are unsure if the product has all the required information, I highly recommend creating a draft listing first, so we'll go ahead and do that. If we create draft, we'll get a notification saying that we've created a draft listing. Now we can pop over to the draft listings tab where we'll see the same parent or the same product that's now in a draft status. From the draft status, we'll go ahead and do a listing validation. So I'll select that product and do validate listings. And validation is complete and this product went straight into a ready status. That's awesome to see because that listing profile we applied earlier had all the information required for Etsy on it. So that profile really kind of saved us some time as part of this process. Now that we know this listing is ready to go and be submitted to Etsy, I'm going to go ahead and publish that. And we're going to publish just the selected listing at this point in time. Great. And that is how we would submit the listing for a variation product out to a storefront. Now, there are a few special concerns for variation listings I want to cover here. So as I mentioned earlier, when you submit a true variation listing out to a storefront, you're just submitting a listing for the parent product. What that means is when you hop back into Ecomdash and take a look at your listing statuses, you're going to see that the parent product has an active listing, but any child products would show as unlisted. The only time when you'll see a child product having an active listing is if that child product is also listed on the storefront outside of that variation product. That scenario I was describing earlier, where you can create a listing for the parent and then a separate listing for each variation. If that's the case, then you would see active listings for the child products. So if you do a lot of work with variation products and submit a variation out to your storefront and start looking through your account and see that your child products aren't actively listed, as long as you have the parent product listed, that's perfectly fine. As I mentioned a couple times, children can be submitted as standalone listings. You do that by submitting the child product to the storefront in addition to submitting the parent product to the storefront. The only storefront that we support variation listings on that varies from this workflow is Jet. With Jet, when you create a draft listing for the parent product, you then need to click into the parent product and submit listings for each of the individual variants. So that process is a little bit different for Jet, and that's just the nature of how Jet manages variation products. So the workflow is a little bit different from within Ecomdash. I'm not going to demo that for you since that's a very specific workflow, but we do have a great guide in our knowledge base that's specifically for creating variation listings on Jet. If that's something that you do and Jet's a storefront that you list variants on, I would highly recommend taking a look at that guide so you can become familiar with that little variation and that workflow for Jet. Now, one thing that I do want to show you regarding creating listings for parent and child products or variation products. If we hop back into Ecomdash and we navigate back to the unlisted products screen, if we go back and do display products not listed on our Etsy storefront and start searching for sweater, as I've been mentioning, when you submit a variation product, you submit that parent off to the storefront, and that parent product is submitted, but you don't do anything with the variants. That can be kind of confusing because on this unlisted products page, we now see all these individual variants, and you might not know or might not remember that the parent product has been listed. It's a great way to account for that in Ecomdash, and that's that exclude products listed as a variation option. If we check that option, and this listing probably hasn't been accepted by Etsy just yet, so we might not have a complete status, but if the parent product shows as active in Ecomdash, and you select that option, none of the child products will show on this page. So very, very helpful so that you make sure that whenever you are looking for products here on the unlisted products page, you are excluding things that are listed as part of a parent. Great, so hopping back into Ecomdash, that's really the basics of submitting a variation listing. So let's go ahead and start discussing how to create listings in bulk. Now, bulk listing is a very straightforward workflow in Ecomdash. Depending on which workflow you use to submit individual listings, this might be the same with just a few more options involved. If you are using the create a listing workflow in Ecomdash, we're using our listing assistant or listing wizard tool, then this workflow might be a little bit new for you, but very, very powerful when it comes to creating listings for multiple products at the same time. You can use this for creating multiple variation listings at the same time. You can use this for creating multiples of any listings at the same time, including listings across different storefronts, at least once the listings have been drafted for a particular storefront. Really, the way this workflow will operate is we'll begin by selecting products from the unlisted products page. We'll create drafts for unlisted products in bulk. We'll then be able to validate and submit those drafts out to your storefronts in bulk. So to do that, let's hop back into Ecomdash. So let's start off on the unlisted products page. And The first step will be creating draft listings for a specific storefront. So let's keep on working with our Etsy storefront here. Now you can create drafts for up to 500 products at a time. To do that, simply use the Show Entries dropdown to select 500 products. Now we don't have 500 products in our test account over here. Scrolling down to the bottom, we only have 97. So I'm going to demo this with a smaller number of listings, but just remember the same process works regardless of how many listings you select. We'll go in and we'll select 25. So what we'll do is we can use this master checkbox at the top, and that's going to select all 25 products that are visible on this page. And then we can use the create draft option to create draft listings for all 25 of those products in one step. So that's awesome. Same process works for up to 500 products at a time. If you notice, if you have multiple pages that your listings are visible on, say you have 1,500 products in your Ecomdash account, you can create drafts for 500. This page will reload without those 500 products on it. You can select another 500 and create drafts for those. So you can do this very quickly. If I wanted to submit another 25 drafts, I would again just use the master checkbox to select all the products and hit create draft. Once your drafts are created, you'll navigate over to the Draft Listings tab. Here we'll be able to see all 25 drafts that I drafted up very quickly, and we can use that listing validation tool to validate all these listings at once. It'll take just a moment longer than doing it with a single product, as Ecomdash is going to have to check all these products and make sure they have all the listing information required by Etsy. Just keep in mind that the more products you're selecting, the longer this process will take. So if you have 500 products that you're performing listing validation for at once, or up to 100 products that you're performing listing validation for at once, it might take a little bit longer. As you can see here, we've got a lot of edits that are required. So we are going to have to edit this information before we publish this information out to Etsy, but that's something we'll come back and address in the next portion of this webinar when we talk about revising listings or setting listing information in bulk. If we do want to go ahead and publish these listings off to Etsy and we get a complete status here, we can use the publish option up at the top of the page. You'll notice when you're hovering over publish, you have two options. You have publish selected and publish all. Now, publish selected will just publish the products that you have placed a check in the box next to. Now you can only view 100 products at a time on this page. So if you've gone through and selected 500 drafts and created 500 draft listings or created 1,000 draft listings all at once, and you don't want to have to go through and do publish selected or select 100, hit publish selected, move to the next page, select 100, hit publish selected, you can use this publish all button. Publish all will publish all of the listings that are in draft status. So any listing in draft status, regardless of whether it has a check in the box next to it and regardless of which page it's on, if you have multiple pages of draft listings, that will publish all of them. Just keep in mind that if you have anything that needs editing, publishing all listings will result in errors that you'll receive back from the storefront. Something to keep in mind regarding your timing and making most efficient use of your processes in Ecomdash. Submitting a listing with all required information is a fairly quick process. Ecomdash says, hey, storefront, here is the product with all the information you need. And the storefront says, that's great, and then publishes that listing. If the listings are missing that information, this process takes much longer to complete. Ecomdash says, hey, storefront, here's your listing. And then the storefront says, wait a minute, there's a problem. And then Ecomdash has to say, what's the problem? And then the storefront tells us what the problem is. If there are multiple problems with the listing, that process can happen multiple times for every single product and can really slow that process down. So I would definitely encourage you to make sure you've performed a listing validation and have addressed any edits that you need to make before you try and select publish all. It'll make that process go much smoother. You'll get the same feedback that you would by performing the validate listings tool that you would by publishing a listing and having it fail and come back from the storefront. You'll just get that feedback a lot faster. Now, since these listings all are going to require edits, before we take that last step of the bulk listing process and hit publish all, we're going to talk about how to revise your listings and set listing information in bulk. So in order to revise listing information in bulk, you're going to use an inventory import format. Now, inventory import formats are totally customizable in Ecomdash, so you can use them for a variety of purposes. Many people use them when you're creating new inventory in Ecomdash or updating things like images or prices in Ecomdash, but they can also be used to update listing information. So if we hop back into Ecomdash, let's take a look at what edits are required for these products. Generally, when we are submitting listings out to a storefront, if one product is going to require a piece of information, all the products are going to require a piece of information. So if we hop into View, Ecomdash is going to show us exactly what information is required to submit this listing out to Etsy. So we do need a price to be set. We also need a shipping template, category, who made it, when was it made, and a listing description. So a few pieces of information there. Now, in order to set that information in bulk, we'll want to build an inventory import format. So let's start working on that. We'll navigate to Settings, Inventory Settings, and Import Format. We're going to add a new import format, and we'll call this Etsy Listing Information. And we will add a new import format. Now, whenever you are creating an import format for listing information, it's very important that you select the storefront that that listing information will apply to. For example, Etsy is going to require different information than eBay will, even though some of those fields might have the same names. So if you're using a storefront specific field, something like the who made it for Etsy, you'll need to select an Etsy storefront so that you'll see the appropriate attributes. Once the storefront is selected, you'll want to go ahead and hit save to confirm that storefront selection. And then you'll want to come down and start adding attributes to your import format. The attributes are the information that Ecomdash will be sending out to the storefront that you're going to be creating the listing on. Any import format is going to need to know what products in Ecomdash it's going to apply these changes to. So you're always going to apply SKU number. Outside of SKU number, you can add any other attributes that you need. In this case, we can do, we'll start setting price, and this is going to be, looks like we've got a couple of eBay attributes showing up here, so let me back up and make sure I selected the right storefront. This is a perfect time to discuss making sure you have unique names for all your storefronts. Looks like our eBay storefront and our Etsy storefront are both named Full Moon Outfitters, so I don't know which one I'm selecting. And you'll see that that's going to cause some problems for us here when we're creating an import format. Awesome, so I've got one that works for Etsy now. I've selected the correct Etsy storefront. So we can add who made it for Etsy. We can add when was it made for Etsy. We can add our price for Etsy. And price in Ecomdash is going to be storefront price. You'll see the same storefront price listing attribute. But since we've got our storefront now set to Etsy, that storefront price will impact the price on Etsy. We can keep on adding those attributes until we're satisfied with the information that we're uploading. And then we'll have a complete inventory import format. Now, once you've built your import format, you'll need to build a file to upload this information into Ecomdash. The guides that we have on creating inventory import formats go into much more detail there. We do have some webinars and awesome YouTube videos on how to create those files and upload this information into Ecomdash. So we can stay on track with the listing webinar. If you do have questions about that, feel free to reach out to our support team. We can provide you with that documentation. It'll also be included in the follow-up videos and YouTube description links for this webinar. Now, once you've uploaded the file setting all this information, all these errors would go away and the listing would move into a ready status. So that will be a ready status instead of an edits required status. Once you see that status is ready, you can select all that inventory and then hit publish, or just use the publish all option without selecting any inventory to push those listings out to the storefront. I'm going to skip out on actually performing the publish step since we know these listings have edits required. They would just create a whole bunch of errors for us on the back end. Now, in terms of listing in bulk, there's also the very important practice of how to submit your revisions in bulk. So we just spent some time discussing how to build an inventory import format to set listing information for new listings, but you can also use inventory import formats to revise your listing information or change the information that is out on your storefronts. If you need to upload new images for your products, maybe you get a copywriter to help you write a bunch of awesome new descriptions for your products, or you even need to do something as simple as changing the price for all your products. Inventory import formats are very useful for that. So that would be the same process that we just discussed, building an import format with the attributes that you're trying to edit, and then uploading that information into Ecomdash. Once you have an active listing, if you need to change information on it, you'll go through a process that's called submit revisions. And submit revisions is done from the active listing page. So say I perform an upload into Ecomdash for this aluminum carabiner, and I upload a new picture for this carabiner into Ecomdash. If I want that new picture to go out to my WooCommerce storefront, I would need to come into Listings, Listing Management, Active Listings, which is the page we're on right now, select that product, and then hit Submit Revisions. At that point, any information that's new or updated in Ecomdash will be submitted out to your WooCommerce storefront. You can submit revisions for up to 250 products at a time for any information, whether that's description, new titles, new images, just new listing attributes. Maybe you've updated your shipping profiles to move from shipping in 3 days to shipping in 1 day. Whatever information that might be, to update that information on the storefront, you will do submit revisions. Now, there is one special thing that I'd like to call out about submitting revisions, because the most common revision we see submitted from Ecomdash is a pricing change. And pricing changes happen all the time in the e-commerce world, and you'll probably want to stay on top of your prices to make sure that you're competitive and that you have the best pricing out there to make sure that you're maximizing your profit and still generating sales. So there is a special process for submitting revisions for pricing changes. If we hop back into Ecomdash, so for example, there are 2 pricing fields that you'll need to be aware of. The first of those is the list price. Now, list price is the last price that Ecomdash is aware the product was selling for on the storefront. So that could have been set when the listing was created, during a listing download from the storefront, or during a listing revision from Ecomdash. But that's what Ecomdash thinks the product is listed for on the storefront. Maybe if we pick a better example, let's see if we have any products in here that actually have a listing price assigned. Great, here we are. So we have some products here that have a list price of 100, and you'll notice all these products currently have the same price in the revised price field. Now, revised price is what the price will be the next time Ecomdash submits a revision out to your storefront. So that's kind of like your current price versus your new price. Whenever you upload pricing information into Ecomdash on your active listings page, you'll see that new price here in the revised price field. I'm going to go ahead and change around some of these prices just so you can see what that looks like. We'll increase the price on that, decrease the price on this video game, and then we'll increase the price on this microphone. Okay, so we now have a few products that the revised price is different than the list price. So we could come through here, select these 3 products, and then hit Submit Revisions. But if you've performed a bulk pricing upload and have more than 250 prices that you need to update, there's a much more elegant way to do that. You'll begin by using one of the filters at the top of the page. It'll be this advanced filter. We'll select there and we'll go to Listing Revision Needed. Now, once that Listing Revision Needed filter is applied, you're going to see all the products in Ecomdash that meet 2 criteria. Either products that don't have a price assigned, so we need to get some pricing information out there, or products for which the revised price is different than the list price. If you notice, all the products that had the list price that were the same as the revised price disappeared from this list. Once Listing Revisions Needed is selected, you can select all your products, hit Submit Revisions, and that's a great way to kind of narrow down and locate those products that just need pricing revisions and submit those out in one batch. Something that's also very useful from the active listings page in terms of editing your products is if you've applied any filters up here, you can use this export listings option, and that'll allow you to easily export your listings so you can just edit the products that need listing revisions or that need changes in listing information. Great way to use that to get that information so you can then adjust that information, re-upload it using an import format, and then submit those listings back out to your storefront. Now, the last part of the listing process that can be done in bulk is ending listings in bulk. Ending listings in Ecomdash does not remove the inventory item from Ecomdash. It simply removes the listing for that product on the storefront you've specified to end the listing on. So if you have a product listed on eBay and Amazon, you can end that listing on Amazon without impacting the eBay listing or how that product looks in Ecomdash at all. You can also end the product on all your storefronts, and that product will still exist in Ecomdash in case you decide to relist it in the future. Kind of the opposite side of that equation is if you do delete a product in Ecomdash, that does not end the listing on the storefront. That's a separate process. So just keep in mind, if you want to end a listing, actually follow the end listing process. Don't just delete that product in Ecomdash because the listing will still be out there and Ecomdash will no longer have a way to communicate with that product. Ending listings is a very straightforward action in Ecomdash. Again, from the active listings pages, that'll be all the products that you can end a listing for. You can use the master selection to select up to 250 active listings at a time. Select all the products on that page, or at least any product you want to end the listing for, and then select End Listings. Ecomdash will communicate with the storefront and end the listing for that product. Let's go ahead and submit one of these and hit End. Wonderful. Now, the last topic that we'll be discussing in this webinar is the listing history page. Now, listing history is going to be very useful if you are submitting listings or submitting revisions from Ecomdash and just aren't seeing those changes take place on the storefront. You can navigate to Listings, History, and Listing Submission History. This page is going to show you a record of any listing submissions, whether those are new listing submissions or updates to listings that have been submitted out of Ecomdash. We can see a few things that have happened during the webinar today and a few things that happened before the webinar today. What this is going to give you is going to give you a date and time as to when that listing submission or revision was performed. It'll show you the product that occurred for. You'll get a status update concerning the status of that listing update or submission, and then what type of listing was performed. So we've got some new listings. We don't have any revisions in here. We also have some listings that were ended. We see a lot of these are in complete status, and we have a notification saying a listing was successfully ended. For the ones that failed, we get a nice little failure message back from the storefront. Some will indicate, hey, this variation product that we tried to submit out to Etsy, that actually failed because there was no price assigned for it. So we can't submit that listing without a price assigned. Looks like earlier today we got a failure message related to some just sort of title formatting from Etsy. Apparently, you're not allowed to use all capital letters in the titles on Etsy. You also can't have the nice little degree sign. So if you do get any feedback like that from the storefront, you can look right here, see what that failure message is, address that by changing the title in bulk, performing some listing edits, and then resubmitting that listing out to the storefront that got that failure message on. Just as an FYI, if you ever do submit a listing and it fails or encounters some sort of error, it will not show on the active listings page. It will be in draft status until it is successfully accepted by the storefront. All right, so that's the agenda that we had in line for the webinar today. So just to kind of recap what we've discussed, we've spent some time discussing listing profiles in Ecomdash, how to create and assign those profiles, how to manage variation listings in terms of submitting those variations out to the storefront, and the differences between submitting a listing for a parent product and submitting a listing for a child product. We also talked about listing in bulk, that's creating listings in bulk, also revising listings in bulk, and then how to submit your revisions in bulk for any products that needed listing revisions required. We wrapped up with a discussion of how to end listings and then a quick overview of the listing history page. So hopefully that information will be useful for you. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and submit those using the listing or using the GoToWebinar tool at this point in time. Looks like we've had at least one question submitted, so if you have any additional questions, feel free to submit those here. Okay, so the first question we had submitted was, do you use upload inventory to import new and revised listings? So upload inventory will be used to upload your products into Ecomdash, but it won't have any impact on the listing status of those products. So if you don't have products in Ecomdash, you can perform an inventory upload to take a CSV file and use an inventory import format to upload that inventory and create those products in Ecomdash. In order to import new listings or listing changes that have happened on a storefront, you want to perform a listing download. So in Ecomdash, a listing download is performed by navigating to Listings, Download Listings. Once you've selected Download Listings, you can select the storefront you would like to download listings from, and then click the Go button. When you are downloading listings, you can download listings from multiple storefronts at a time. Any products that are on that storefront and actively listed that are not in Ecomdash will be created in Ecomdash, and any changes to listing information, like if you update a title or update a description on Amazon, or well, Amazon's probably not a great example for that, but if you update a description on your WooCommerce storefront or on your eBay storefront and perform a listing download, that new description will be pulled into Ecomdash. Great, well, it looks like that was the only question we've had so far. I'll leave this page up for a few more minutes in the event anyone has any additional questions. If any come in, I'll be happy to answer them before the end of the presentation. Moving forward, we offer webinars with Ecomdash fairly regularly. The next one we have scheduled is coming up in just about a week on June 13th. The topic of that webinar is going to be tips to make your Amazon business more efficient. So if you do sell on Amazon, definitely drop by for that one. There should be some awesome content in there. It's going to be a very focused webinar, not so much on how to do things in Ecomdash, but the communication between Ecomdash and Amazon and how to optimize your sales on the Amazon storefront. So we look forward to seeing you all joining us then. And that's the end of the content for this webinar. If you do have any questions for us, feel free to reach out and get in touch with our support team. You can always schedule a call with us using the schedule a call option in the upper right-hand corner of your Ecomdash account. That's accessible by clicking on the question mark and selecting schedule a call. You can also shoot us an email at support@ecomdash.com or contact our live chat service with any questions you may have. If you have any questions about the content of this webinar, feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to explain further or give you some guides that'll point you in the right direction. And if any other questions that you have in Ecomdash, we're always here to help you out. So we'll look forward to working with everyone in the future on any questions related to listing or just general use in Ecomdash. We haven't had any additional questions submitted at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and that'll be the end of the webinar today. If you do have any questions that pop up, feel free to reach out and get in touch with us. We'll be happy to assist you. And thanks for joining us on the webinar today. We look forward to being able to work with you for serving your e-commerce needs in the future. Hope you have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great weekend when that rolls around, and we'll look forward to seeing you on another webinar in the future.